Hi there. Today it's part two of our asset restructuring, where we look at, the question: will you need to sell assets to get around retirement? And the timing, the taxes, and getting money into super. So this is part two. If you haven't seen part one, go back. That paints the framework and looks at our first case study. Today we've got another case study with some different angles, particularly around Centrelink and age differences, but also more on home downsizer. So let's dive in. And before we get started, as always, all the information that you see online from me is general advice. That means it hasn't been prepared specifically for you. We hope it's really helpful, but you should not act on anything until you get advice, or do your own research to make sure everything is suitable for your own circumstances. We love a framework, we love a context, and we get both a context and real planning for decision makings around all things financial by having our 5 essential steps to an awesome retirement. So it's our framework for making financial decisions around retirement. So we have that core belief that the best decisions are made as part of a plan. And any plan consists of where are you now, your stock take, what are you trying to achieve, in this case, retirement goals. Then and only then do we get down to strategy and tactics. Strategy is the broader picture. Do you put more in super? Do you pay off debt? Do you buy property? Do you sell property? All those things are strategy. And then tactics. When do you do it? Exactly how much? How do you manage all the interwoven bits there? So people often jump in and look at tactics well before they've thought about their plan. So we'll often get the question, should I sell my investment property before I retire? And the answer is, I don't know. Let's have a look at the context. Let's have a look at your plan before we make that decision. So all that comes together in a plan, and then it's just getting the actions done. So the main reasons that people sell, just as a refresh from the last one around retirement: one, to pay off debt. It's good to be debt free in retirement. It's not essential. There are times where sometimes you might keep a bit of debt, particularly if you've got a property that's well and truly covering itself, an investment property or two. But generally, it's nice to pay off debt in retirement. Sometimes we sell assets because we want to get more into super. Super is the best tax haven in the world for Aussies, up to $2 million each in tax-free earnings, no capital gains, and all you've got to do is manage your investments well. Lots of people say they don't like super. What they really mean is they don't like their super investments. You get to have control, whether that's through a self-managed super fund or through a platform where you make conscious decisions. You get control. It's your super, and it's a structure, not an investment. Sometimes we'll have an asset that just won't be okay for retirement. Yeah, if you've got a business, you're probably going to sell your business before retirement. Property as well. And for property, people can also get sick of that asset. Some people will just be sick of being landlords. Property is an awesome investment for building wealth. It's pretty good if you've got enough in retirement, but it doesn't provide a whole lot of income. As an example, $1 million suburban property might generate 800 a week in rent. That's 40,000. Less 5 to 10,000 in cost means there's only 30,000 of income being produced from that $1 million. Now that's not going to give you a great retirement. If you had two of those, 60,000, maybe it's enough for some people, not for most of the people that I know. So even though there's $2 million of assets, whereas that held in a broader portfolio inside and or outside a super will generate about 100,000 of income. Now, partly that's because you're drawing it down. So the property asset will grow if you keep it. Your kids and your grandkids will be thankful, but it's not going to help your cash flow in retirement. And sometimes with the home, we're right sizing or we're downgrading. That just means somewhere in our journey, almost inevitably, most people will sell their home. Not everyone. Some people want to move to something smaller. Sometimes it's not necessarily smaller, it's just more practical, whether that's a single story, whether it's moving to a unit by the beach with a view instead of the multi-story acreage that takes a whole lot of work. You know your story, and there's often a home decision around asset restructuring. And sometimes it's just to get more income and cash flow, and less growth, like the property switch I talked about. Because you might want to, if you were that person that had two investment properties, you might want to actually have 150 grand a year for the next 30 years. And you can achieve that if you sold it, put that money into super or portfolios, and manage it well, as always. So let's have a look at the key areas we consider. One is, what is the market doing? So where are we in the cycle? We touched on that in the last conversation around this. So are we at the top of the hill? Are we at the bottom of the hill? Has the market just gone down? Has it been going up steadily? I talk about this every day with clients when we're rearranging. There's kind of three best times to sell property in particular. One is after a crazy boom. So, and you know what I mean. If you've held property for a long time, you know when the market's just gone nuts. You think, wow, it's just been so good. And we know that's not ever going to happen forever, because after a boom comes at the very, very worst, at the very least, a slowdown and often a collapse. So one, after a crazy boom. Two, never. If it actually fits your plans and you can produce enough cash flow, you can hold a property forever quite comfortably, and you'll do well if you can cope with the management, the maintenance, all the rest of it, and you've got enough cash flow from all of your assets. So that's two reasons. And the third is during a crazy boom and after you've retired. So, and that just helps you manage the tax more easily. You won't pay quite as much capital gains tax because you're not earning other income as well. So that's kind of the market timing. Shares, same again. Capital gains tax, yeah. So we need to take that into account. And the changeover costs. Often some people want to flip a property in the last 5 to 7 years before retirement. They want to sell one and buy another one. They go, just be careful, because you're going to tear up $100,000 just to do it. So even the first 100,000 that you make, you're not even ahead. And that's before capital gains tax. So that's just changeover costs, stamp duty, agents fees, tearing up close to 100 grand and potentially more depending on the value. Add taxes to that, and you've now got less capital to reinvest, and it's going to take some time to get that back. Not saying not to do it, but do your numbers carefully, and you'll see some examples of this in the case study today. Yeah, getting money into super, there's time limits, age limits. We touched on that in our last episode. I'll touch on it again today. But sometimes people will sell a house or do some before they hit a certain age or stage, just so they can get money into super. Liquidity issues, some assets, property, and particularly in different market types, some assets take longer to sell. That just means that illiquid shares are very easy to sell, but you can find yourself in any type of market, up or down, because of that liquidity. And the one we're adding today, and this one, we're going to talk about Centrelink age pension. For lots of people we work with, they're not likely to qualify for much of an age pension early. Sometimes it's something that kicks in later in their life if they're spending down their assets. But for some, like our case study today, where there's an age difference, sometimes we can structure assets to make sure one person qualifies for a little while, and you'll see that example shortly. Once again, I love a framework. It's good to have a framework to make decisions. In this case, we're on a list. We always want to see an objective that equates to the stock take. What have we got? But then we evaluate. And I do this in two steps, the evaluate, then the analyze. Firstly, we evaluate, because sometimes we just know we want to sell something. Let's say we've got an investment property and our plan's always to sell it somewhere near retirement. So we don't necessarily need the same sort of detailed analysis as if we're not sure whether we need it. We still may do that, by the way. So then we analyze, then we get detailed, nitty gritty with the numbers, not only the analysis about what the numbers look like if we keep it, but also if we sell it, what sort of capital gains? Can we mitigate the capital gains through putting money into super or delaying it until we've retired, or other strategies? And then we make a decision. All right, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to sell it after I retire. If it's a property, maybe I'm going to polish it up so to get as much money as possible. And then we got a list of actions. So here's our case study. So we've got a couple in Brisbane, Jack and Jill. Jack's age 66, Jill's 58. So we've got that age difference, not uncommon. That's a similar age difference to me and my wife. I'm not going to qualify for age pension no matter what. But in this case, even though these guys have got plenty of assets, we can actually maneuver it. And I'll show you how in a minute. But their plan is to retire in 1 year's time, particularly Jack. Jill may continue to do some part-time work. But Jack's ready and he's going to retire in 1 year. That would make him 67. So that, ironically, is the age where Centrelink age pension, you become eligible. Now, you've still got to survive an asset test and an income test, and I'll touch on that. But the first thing is you've got to be 67. So in 1 year's time, Jack will be 67. So yeah, it's worth considering. Now, they might have thought they had too many assets. They've got an investment property in Brisbane. It's worth 900,000. Costs 400,000. They got a loan of 400,000, and it used to be Jack's former home. So he bought it quite a while ago for 400,000, and yeah, so he lived in it for a while. Then when he remarried, in this case, they went and bought another house and they kept that as an investment property. So that's important because the downsizer provisions, and I'm going to go through the downsizer provisions in detail, they actually apply to any house that has a capital gain tax exemption. So in this case, there'll be a partial exemption because it was owned by Jack as his principal place resident for a period of time. And I'm going to come back to that. So super 550 and 50,000. Now that's relevant. Lots of observations here. So if I'm doing my preliminary evaluation, I'm going, well, one, it's out of whack. It's nice to even it up to a degree. Jill's 58. In 1 year's time, she'll be 59. She's almost 60 when she'll be able to access super. Jack's got more. We're going to try and put more in, but also 550, he's over the amount where we can claim the carry forward concessional contributions. So we've talked about this some time, but basically you've got concessional contribution limit currently 30,000. And if you look back over the last 5 years, you'll have either used all of that or not. If you haven't used all of it, you can catch that up in any 1 or 2 or more years. So, but you can only do that if your balance is under 500,000. Now, it's under 500,000 at June 30, the year before you do it, but there's nothing to stop us taking money out to get it under 500,000, then sell the asset the year later. If that's what we're trying to do. Not saying we can do it in this case, but it's an option. Now, their new home, which they've been in for a while now, it's 1.5 million. They don't have a mortgage on it. They've paid it down rapidly over the last decade. They're looking to downsize to something. They know they don't quite have enough to spend what they want in retirement. And also the house is not suitable for, it's okay now, but it's not suitable for their late 70s and 80s, 2 stories, a few awkward bits, a sloping driveway, this type of thing. So they know they want to sell it, but it's okay now. They're not in a hurry. They actually want to delay it as long as possible, but they know at some stage they will. So when we talk about it, we work out that they'll probably downsize it to something equivalent to about $1 million. Now, they're earning 120,000, 75,000 now. They want to be debt-free in retirement. They wouldn't mind. They've heard about this age difference thing, and they'd like to maximise any age pension if they can without being silly. Now, you can be really silly to qualify for an age pension. You can buy a big house, have almost no other assets, and you'll qualify because your home is exempt, but it's not always a smart thing to do. Although I know a couple of people that have managed that well, but it takes a bit of luck in the property market as well. And their number, they're not big spenders. They're going to be happy with 80,000 a year. So let's have a look at age pension rates and the means test to start with. So the age pension for a single is about 30,000 a year. Now we've got Jack and Jill here as a couple. So a couple combined is 46,000. So split that apart, it's roughly 23,000 each. So that's the number here that if Jack qualifies for a full pension, he could get 23,000. Now there's lots of people who end up qualifying for a part pension because of the asset test and because of the income test. So both are applied, and you can see at the top end for the asset test, for a homeowner, if you've got 1,074, the 1.33 is for a non-homeowner, but for a homeowner, anything more than 1,074,000 in assets, and you get 0 pension. Now, if you've got less than that, you might get $1, you might get, and it proportions up from the minimum. So if you've got assets of less than 481,000, you will qualify for a full age pension. Now, those assets, important to understand what they include and exclude. So they include all your cars, all your personal assets, your home content. They include any shares, any property. They include your superannuation balances, but only if you're over 67, and they also include any pension balances. So if you start an age pension at 60, if you start account-based pension from your superannuation account 65 and you've still got it when you're 67, that would count. But here's what it excludes. One is the house, as we've talked about. So it doesn't count your family home, and it doesn't count any superannuation balances that aren't in pension mode. In other words, that you're not drawing down a regular pension, um, and where you're under 67. As soon as you're 67, it counts. So this creates an opportunity. So just a reminder, Jill's 58. She'll be 59 when Jack and her retire. So there's 8 years that if they can structure it correctly, they'll be able to get a pension. So what we can do is potentially shelter away from the assets test by moving some money out of Jack's super into Jill's super. But let's have a look at the numbers in a minute. There's an income test as well. They work together and you get the worst one. The income test, you can earn up to, for a couple, they can earn up to about 102,000 a year before they lose their full age pension. A lot of money. They're not getting much, by the way. They're getting a few dollars, but sometimes people like to qualify for an age pension to get the health card and other benefits that go with that. Sometimes that's false economy for some. Sometimes, particularly for people with lots of medications, it's quite valuable. So that's a bit of a background on the asset test. And let's have a look at the downsizer rules as well. So eligibility. Now let's think about how this works in relation to Jack and Jill. So to be eligible, you've got to be 55 years and older. So tick. The home must be your main residence and you must have owned it for at least 10 years before the sale. Now, the note there is that the note 2, which it doesn't say here, but if you look on the tax office, says if it's been partially exempt because you've lived in it at some stage, it actually qualifies. So in this case, the investment property counts as well. So they can sell that, and because they've owned that for more than 10 years, and they can claim the downside. Now, the downside is not so much as a claim, but a gateway that allows you to put 300,000 into super. If you've both been partial to that ownership of the house, it's 300,000 each. Now, there's some really important admin bits, and if you're going to do this, you should get good advice. Make sure you understand the rules completely. You've got to put the money in within 90 days of getting it. Otherwise, you can't do it. The tax implications, it's non-concessional contributions. So you don't lose any tax when it goes into your super, and it's not subject to the non-concessional cap. So it's a free ride on top of the cap. So really useful. And there's no requirement to buy a new home. So, there's no requirement at all. You could sell it. If you decide you're going to rent, you could sell it, move into your holiday home, or you could sell it, in this case, stay in the other home for now. So Jack and Jill, tick. So then we're going to have a look at the market. So these guys are in Brisbane. So the market in Brisbane as we speak, and it's November 2025. Brisbane's had a good 5 years. It's gone through that stage of buy momentum. And this comes from our friends at Performance Property, the buyers advocates we use, because they've got as good a data and interpretation of the market as I've seen. These property clocks aren't perfect, but they represent where some clever people think the property market is in terms of this cycle. And the property cycle is where, it's that boom bust mentality, but they've called it, there's a point where, eventually a property peaks. It can go down, even though it's not much sometimes. It can just go sideways or that stagnation, sometimes for long periods of time. Certainly here on the sunny coast, I've seen 2 periods of more than 10 years where the market does absolutely nothing. As we sit at the moment, it's done a lot in the last 7 years, which is why the Sunshine Coast is probably at the peak, according to Performance Property. Not necessarily all the way there yet, but certainly approaching. And it doesn't mean it can't keep going. Sometimes markets reinvent themselves. The supply and demand dynamics persist that keeps it going. Sydney's a classic example of something that, even though it feels like it's expensive, often keeps going up. And sometimes the downside can be quick as well before another cycle starts. But eventually, places like Melbourne at the moment's a good example, hasn't done almost anything in comparison to Brisbane for the last 5 years, and it's starting to look like a bit of value. And at some point, that just means it stops going down, starts to trickle up, but then it can go on a tear. You've seen this with your own properties at the time where all of a sudden, wow, it's gone up 100 grand, 200 grand. And it can happen sometimes within a year or two where things go up really quickly. And then, this is not by science, this is not by clockwork, but it's pretty good if we're taking into account the property cycle to understand where it fits. So in this case, their Brisbane property, yeah, it's at that stage where it's probably not a bad time to sell if it suits their financial plan, and it does in this case. If it was down, if it was a property in Melbourne, we might be suggesting maybe they hold it for 3 or 4 years, work out how they can keep the cash flow, because it might go up 30, 40% in that period of time. Not saying Melbourne will, but it's certainly in a position where it's potentially more likely than Brisbane to do that. So the worst thing to do for them would be to sell the investment property now. Um, they'd get 380 after tax, downgrade the home now. They'd free up 500,000, put everything into super. They'd have 1.48 million in total. They would get no Centrelink. That's why. They could start an income stream. They can get the 80,000, but they're going to miss out on the freebie that is Centrelink. Now, it wouldn't be terrible, but they wouldn't qualify for an age pension for at least 10 years. Now, in this case, we think they can. Let's have a look at what might be the best thing to do. And I've put a maybe there with a smiley face because there's so many factors in these things. You've got to look at it from multiple angles. And in 25, 30 minutes today, I'm trying to give you some concepts to help your own thinking, not necessarily solve this puzzle exactly. But they might sell the property after Jack retires. That's 1 year. That's 800,000 after tax now. Because what we can also do, we can withdraw enough from Jack Super this year to get him to go below 500,000, and then we can put some money into super, for this year, plus the downsizer into super, and plus 200 into Jill Super. So we can actually get quite a lot of money into super for Jill, and that's going to mean we can. And then we're going to delay the downgrade in the home until the super almost runs out. So they're going to spend Jack Super first, pulling 80,000 out. They're going to get 23,000 of age pension. So 23,000 of age pension is going to mean they only need to draw off 57,000 out of the super. And if they get this for 8 years, which is their age difference, it's a free $160,000. So I'll say that again, free 160,000. All they've got to do is keep the Centrelink paperwork up to date, keep the assets in this structure because they can build money into super for Jill. And they can do that in a number of ways because they can literally, Jack's satisfied a condition of release. He's 65. Once you're 65, you can get at your super. So he can pull as much out as he likes. Then we've got Jill's non-concessional contribution caps. We've got it. We can use the downsizer. And Jill lived in that house when she first met Jack. So she's eligible for that downsizer as well. So we can get all that extra money into super for Jill. We can structure to keep Jack under 480,000 in assets. We'll allow for the car, the home, furniture, etc. So I might have 400,000 in super. So then we're going to be pulling 57,000, not 80,000, out of 400,000 in super. That's going to last, just do the maths without any return. That's going to last about 7 years without any return. So it should last the 8 years. And by the way, if they run out of money sooner, they can still pull money out of Jill's super once she's 16 and retired. It just won't be a pension amount. It'll still be tax free. But they can keep Jill's super not as a pension, they'll qualify for age pension. So then they can sell the house later. Once Jill's approaching 67, that's their home, that is, top up the super, and they'll have pocketed a free $167,000 just by getting an age pension that they wouldn't if they did things in a different order. So hopefully you can see, without going into the detailed mechanics of all that, they've saved tax as well because we've delayed the sale until Jack's not working. We've got him below the 500,000 where we can do the carry forward of super, so we can reduce the capital gains tax on the property. We've made sure he's going to claim enough of it as his principal place of residence, so he's going to get that right down as well. So hopefully shown you there all the different bits around a simple asset restructure that in this case saved people a lot of tax, plus got free silver. The benefit of this, of just that delaying the strategy. So the same things, but just in different order and different timing, is a free 200,000 then of less tax plus the age pension. So summing up from today's case study, we've often got to restructure our assets as part of retirement. Nearly everyone's going to have to do something. Not everyone. If you're staying in your house forever and you've only got superannuation, then potentially you're not. but almost everyone else has got stuff they've got to think about. So the planning and timing can make a big difference. And yeah, that's around taxes, that's around the super rules, age pension, downsizer. So do your numbers. If you're not confident, get help or tune into stuff like this, including our resources online. That will help you get the confidence you need to either do it yourself or decide that it's worth getting professional help. So sometimes it just allows you to go and get that help with more confidence that you can have a conversation with someone. So that's today's podcast. Check out all our services on our website, runwaytoretirement.com.au. If you like this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to, please like it, please share it. The more people that see it, the more people we can help. And if you've got any topics you'd love us to cover, please send us an email. Please put a comment on. We'll keep an eye out and we'll make an endeavour to cover that in future episodes. So until next time, this is Rob McGregor signing out.